Welcome back to my workshop. Now today is a continuation of the shed build, which seems to be going on forever. Now hopefully if you've seen the previous videos, you've seen me lay the concrete base, you've seen me make the base of the shed, and you've seen me put up the walls. So the next logical step is to put a roof on it. So obviously this is going to have a pitched roof, which runs the length of the shed. So what I need to do is make a series of frames to sit on the top of the walls to actually hold up the roof. Now let's draw you a quick picture so you can see what I mean. Now this is obviously the base. Let's rub this out. So what we have now is obviously the base, we have the walls. So let's redraw that. This base, we have walls. Something like that. So what we need now is a series of A-frames that fit across the roof. Yeah, that's the rough idea. How does that look? Obviously I tried to do this on SketchUp, but I haven't got time to learn to do SketchUp, so what I'm going to have to do is make this one up and then learn later on. So the construction of these is going to be a little bit, make it up as you go along, okay? Let me show you what we're going to do. So if we look at the side of the shed, okay, we've got obviously this sort of thing. Now each of the truss, so we'll say this is our centre line. Okay, obviously I can't be more than, I think it's 2.5 metres tall. Okay, so what I need to do is I'm going to make some joists that sit like this. Okay, and then exactly the same on the other side. Okay, so each of these is going to be made out of a 4x2, and then across the top here I'm going to have a bracing piece of ply like this. Okay, that's the rough idea. Now I've already made a bit of a prototype. I'll show you what I've made and then I'll show you how I'm going to repeat the pattern. So let's get out in the sunshine and I'll show you what I've made so far. Right, so this is the prototype. I'm now outside, obviously. I've got my baseball cap on, not because I'm cool, but because I've got no hair and I get sunburn. So this is the idea, and I've got to make 7 of those. Now let me show you what I'm going to do to make sure I repeat the pattern. Okay, so what I've done here is I needed a flat surface. So we've got an ideal situation here. We've got a flat surface in the base of the shed. Now what I've done is I've screwed a 2x2 to the floor, and this is to simulate the top rail of the shed. This should save me getting up and down the ladder. So what I need to do now is make sure that this 2x2 is exactly the same width as the shed, which I've done by adding an extra block on the corner here just to increase the length. Then what I need to do is measure how high I actually want the tip of my roof. So let's quickly do a measurement there. Okay, so we now know how high we want the roof. We've got to take into account the thickness of the 4x2s. But what we need to do first is mark between each end. We need a centre line. And then we'll draw a centre line on the floor here, just so we can have something to refer to. 2, 4, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we now have our centre line. Now I know the difference between the top of the roof and how high I want the apex, and then obviously taking off the difference of this piece of wood. Okay, so that mark now gives me the lowest point where my joists have got to go. Now the easiest way to do it without doing lots of trigonometry and getting yourself all confused with maths is to obviously lay a beam out and then mark it up. Let me show you how to do that. Right, so we've got our centre line point here, and we've got obviously the edge of the roof here. So if we just take our 4x2 from that point there to the corner, the bottom corner here. Let me show you. Right there, that's where I want it. Now obviously these are on different levels, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to block this up so it's all the same level. Okay, so at the minute we've got quite a bit of an overhang here. We don't know how big that's going to be at the moment, so we can deal with that later. So I've got to leave at least enough so I can cut some off. So let's go a little bit more. That'll do. Okay, so we've got this corner here. Okay, there's our centre mark. Okay, so that is the rough angle we're going to have it at. Like this. So obviously here's the roof beam. And this is the rafter. Okay, I'm probably not going to have a joist on this one. But there's our centre line. If you wanted to do some maths, some trigonometry, this is where you start using it. Okay, so you've got your opposite and adjacent, and this is your hypotenuse, and then you need this angle. Or you could just measure it. So if we put a square against that centre line point, up against the board. Right, so that will give us 1 point. Let's mark that briefly. Okay, and on this end, what we'll do is I've got a teeny tiny pencil. Okay, and all I'm going to do is get underneath here and mark my bird's mouth. I'll show you what that is in a sec. Right, so what have we got? Okay, we got this. Okay, we call that a bird's mouth. I'll show you what that's for. Alright, so when we cut out our bird's mouth, which is just like this, what it does, it actually sits on the end of the roof. So if we lower this into place, this one's not very good because it's my prototype, but that sits like that. Okay, and at the other end, that sits like that. Okay, so that's what your bird mouth is. So what we need to do now is the one we just marked up, this one here, you've got to cut that out, and we've also got to draw the angle for this upright. Right, so here we've got our centre line, okay, and what we need to do is carry that straight on. Now you can obviously eyeball that, but that's not very accurate. So what we're going to do, set up our little angle finder here, and we're going to measure this angle. Okay, so we still haven't taken any real measurements, but this is our first angle. Set that angle. Once you've got that angle, what you can do is use your square on here, and then this angle lined up with our marker we made, that will give us our straight line. Okay, so then you just scribe that and then chop it on the chop saw. How easy is that? Right, so I've still not actually measured any angles, but what I'm going to do now is use this angle, which we've just discovered, and a square. So you put your square up against the fence here, and then you use this angle against there to find the proper angle. Okay, and then you adjust your chop saw, and then that should give you the right angle. Okay, so I've done that, and it's given me about 18 degrees. Okay, which should be a good enough slope on there. Right, let's chop this. Right, you can see what I've done here is I've left probably about 10 mil this side. Okay, this is on the centre point, but I've left this deliberately so when it's actually up on the roof you've got some sideways movement which you'll need for alignment, which I'll show you that later on. Okay, so all we need to do now is make another matching one of those, so we'll just use that one as a template for the next one. So this joint here is now good. I don't know if you can see that, hopefully you can. Obviously using a jigsaw is not the best thing because obviously it's a little bit rough, but we've got a little gap this side, and if we look on the other side, we got a gap on this side as well. Okay, so we're good with it. So all I've got to do now is cut another couple of sets of those, but first of all, let's do the cross brace. Right, so what we want to do here is, obviously we haven't got a cross brace across here. Okay, so we're just going to put a gusset across here. Now what I'm going to use for that is a little bit of ply. Now this is the one I cut for the prototype, and all it does is that sits like that, a little bit short of the top, okay, because then your roofing material won't touch it. Okay, and this is all we got, so just a gusset like that. Now what I'm using for this is just some offcuts from the old shed. Let me show you. Okay, this was a bit of the old shed. I think this was a bench that was in the shed. So all I've got to do now is find a bit of that where I can put it on. Okay, draw around that as a template, cut that out, and then that gives me my next gusset. Now there will be two of these for each joist, apart from the gable ends. Okay, the ones that go on this end and the far end, okay, they'll only have one each. So I've got to cut as many of these out as I can. Okay, so we're happy with our joint here. We're happy with our gusset. We're going to put that on, but don't forget to leave a little bit of a gap here, so when the OSB goes on the top, it doesn't actually touch these. We're literally just going to line those up and stick some screws in it. But also, I've never done this before, but we're going to put some adhesive on it. I'm using this one from Wix, just to give it a little bit of extra hold. Let's see how we get on with that. Right, once you've got your gusset on one side, you literally just turn it over, if you can. And then put another gusset on the other side. Right, so we now have a gusset on either side. This makes it quite strong. Let's see how strong it is. Can I sit on it? That'll do. Right, so let's try this up on the roof, see if it actually fits. Well, that fits. Let's have a look from the other side. So that fits okay. Now this is obviously one of the middle beams because the gussets are on both sides. Okay, this is a little bit ropey. Okay, because I've used the jigsaw, but it's the same on the other side. But we should be able to screw that in place. Right. So what I've got to do is make 7 of those. Right, so it's now Wednesday night. I've got a couple of hours to actually try and get something done. The temperature has dropped. I mean, it was 35 degrees the other day and now it's about 4 degrees. It's freezing. Right, before I actually mount these trusses up, what I need to do is trim the ends off to allow for the overhang. Now, obviously I've got to allow for the guttering on the front and the back. So let me show you the rough measurements I'm going to do for that. Right, so what I need to do is I need to trim it off here somewhere. Now on here I'm going to have some battens to hold the cladding, so they're going to be 20 mil. Then I'm going to have the actual cladding, which is another 20 mil, so that's about 40 mil. I'm going to allow probably another 7 or 8 mil just because I can. So this block here is about the same distance away I need it. These are the brackets I'm going to use. Okay, so these are going to go probably about there. And what I want is the overhang to be so it drops the water into the guttering. Now obviously I'm going to have a fascia on here as well, so judging it, I'm probably going to want it about there somewhere. So what I've got to do is now strike this line up here and then cut all of my trusses to the same length, front and back. Right, so my trusses are all cut now on the ends. What I've got to do now is mark up, or what I've just done is marked up every 2 foot. Now I've got 7 trusses, 14-foot shed, so every 2 foot I'm going to have a truss. Now when you're measuring these out, always measure them from one end, okay, because there'll be a slight difference and you'll end up with a compound error at the end, and in this case there's about 1 inch difference. Okay, so I've measured them from the end every 2 foot. Now what I've got to do is put an upright at either end to hold the gable ends. So I'm going to get a couple of old bits of wood and stick them up. Right, so what I've got now is I've got an upright here, which is just a bit of old cladding off the old shed, and I've got another one at this end. So these are the gable ends. Now the bit of wood I've put up there, it doesn't have to be smart, it doesn't have to be clever, it doesn't even have to be straight, as long as it covers the very tip of the rafters there. Okay, same on this end, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a string line between these two, and that will give me a straight line across the top of the roof so I can line up all the rest of my joists. Now on the ends here, let's go out here, what I've done is I've made sure there's equal distance here between the front and at the back as well, and the same on the other joist. Right, so what I've got to do now is climb up this ladder and mark a position to drill a hole. Yeah, so I've got to drill a hole right at the apex. Okay. Okay, so I've now run my string line. Okay, you can see it there. It's right at the apex there. String line goes all the way across there, onto the apex on that one, through a hole in a bit of wood, and it's screwed. There's a screw on the back where the string goes. Now what I'm doing is on each of these, I'm just banging one of these in, which is I think a 120mm screw, all the way through and into the capping beam. Okay, I might have to put the camera down for this because I can't hold the camera and do it. Alright, so I don't know if you noticed then, trying to hold the camera and screw that in at the same time, this sort of thing happens. Yeah, look, that's knackered. Alright, let's go and find another one of those. Right, it's starting to get dark now, and obviously I don't want to make too much more noise. Yeah, these roof trusses are all up now, apart from this one. Yeah, I can't count. 7, yeah, that's half of 14. Yeah, but you need one at each end, so that makes 8. Right, so I've got to make another one of these. Let's have a look at my string line, and I'll show you what I used it for. Right, okay, so I had an upright post here with my string line. Let's get up here and have a look. Okay, see a string line, and that's how I've used the string to line up all of the joists. Right, let's get down, clear up, because it's getting late. Got to tidy that up here. I can't count. Oh, just one more thing before I clear up for the evening. I've put a batten across the top here. So look, this one here, that goes across. It's actually 2 pieces of wood. It's just to turn it into a bit of a box section to stabilise these until I get the actual OSB on the roof. So that's what that's for. It's only temporary. Right, tidy up. Right, so now I've made the missing truss. That is now in place. Now, each truss is obviously at the moment only held in by 1 screw at either side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of these little brackets, which as you can see I've already put on here. Now I'm putting them on the outside rather than on the inside. So one of these on each joint. Right, let's get on with that. Right, so on the end of each gable end, I want a little bit of an overhang, probably about that fat. Okay, so what I'm going to do is going to use these, which is the old joists of the old shed, and just basically cut them, screw them in this position, and then the OSB can sit across the top. That will give me a little bit of an overhang. Not much, but a little bit. Right, I'm at the point now where I can put some OSB on the roof. I've just done a trial run and I've got a bit of an issue with the length. Let me demonstrate what's happening. Right, so the plan is to have an 8x4 sheet here and then another one here. Now obviously this is only 14 foot long, so I should have plenty to play with 2 sheets of OSB. The problem is 8 foot from this very end to the end here is in the middle of 2 joists. And the same from that end. Let's get me washing out of the way. Yeah, so 8 foot from there to the end of the board is obviously not on a joist. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to move either that joist or that joist just a couple of inches either way, so then I end up with a join on top of a joist. Something I didn't want to do, but it does mean that these are going to be not equal spaced, but I don't think that's going to matter. So let me move one of these joists and hopefully it'll work. Right, looking at this, I've got to move that joist or that joist to line up with either that or that. I think what I'll do is I'll move this joist, then that brings that in the middle, which will spread the load over this upright. Okay, I know there's a join here, but that's okay, rather than mucking about with this, because there's another join here. And I must put a little brace in here. Okay, so I'm going to move this joist. Right, so by the magic of YouTube, I've now moved this joist from here to here, and then up the top. That gives me, okay, gives me that. So the end of my board should be in the middle of there, so I can have one board along there, and then one board that way. Right, let's hope the wind doesn't get up too much. Right, so I've got to try and get that board up here. I've got my screws ready. I've got my ladder ready for when I get it up here, so I can get some screws in as quick as possible. And outside here on the joist, I've got a little peg here, here and here, so when I put the board up, it can rest on those pegs. Problem is, the wind has really got up. Yeah, this could be interesting. So let's give that a go. Right, well that seemed to work a treat, no disasters. I've got to get the rest up yet. Right, so the next board has got to go here, but the problem is I can't access it that side because there's another garden. So all I've got to do is go over the top on this side and then slide it down that way. I've put my end stops on the end of these joists. Let's hope I don't drop it in their garden. Right, as you can see, it's getting darker in here now. That's because the roof is actually on. All the boards are on, all the joists, rafters are all up. Let's have a quick look at the top and see what it looks like. Right, let's try not to kill myself climbing up a ladder with a tripod. Okay, so the roof is on now. So this is a full sheet. This is a full sheet. There's two thinner sheets here. This is about 3/4 of a sheet, 3/4 of a sheet, and two thinner sheets there. Okay, it's all screwed in. I should probably tape this all up when I do the felting. I think that's it for now on the top. Let's get down that, killing myself. There's the slight overhang. So look at that from underneath. Yeah, a little bit of an overhang. Obviously we're going to have a fascia board on here, all the way across. Right, I've quickly done my gable ends now on both ends, this end and this end. It's just basically a centre beam and then a couple of big triangles. I'll show you the construction of those and then I'll show you it from outside. Yeah, so basically I've got another 4x2 here, which is cut at an angle at the top. This is a sheet of OSB cut to this shaped triangle, and then it's just held in with battens. There's a little bit of an air gap there, but that'll all be covered in by the membrane. Okay, so battens along here and it's screwed in that way. Let me show you it from outside. Okay, so from outside you can see it's all flush with this OSB. There's my main centre support. This is actually doing quite a good job of actually supporting the roof as well. Okay, so that's cut at the same angle as the roof, and this is held in just by toenailing some screws in there. Okay, right, that's about it. Right, so I think we'll call it a day for this video. The roof is all on, all the OSB's on, all the joists are all done, the gable ends are done. So I think the next step is to actually wrap the whole thing in a waterproof, breathable membrane. Okay, that'll be in the next video. Right, thank you very much for watching. Bye. Whatever they're called, these things. Camera focus. A pitched roof, so let's do a quick, oh god damn, it's so hot.